And one. Panel, the key word in this motion is fully compensate. And the motion states that states should fully compensate the victims of crimes committed by recidivist criminals. So what this means is that when you are a victim of a recidivist criminals and maybe you broke an arm or you broke a leg or maybe worse, then the job of the state here is to fully compensate you, to fully pay the money of the hospital fee that you were attending. And that is what our team is opposing to. And because we heard that proposition says a lot about emotional support, but we want to make a clarification is that just because in our world we don't require the state to fully compensate doesn't mean that they will not do anything to help the people. They will still do something to help the people, and they will still provide the services, or they will still pay the money for the hospital fee, but it is just half of it or some of it so that those victims can be stable on their feet. And we have already proved to you why fully compensation is not going to be effective. So first of all, is that which side will be able to benefit these vulnerable stakeholders, which is the state and the recidivist criminals and also the victims too. On our side, we focus on the effectiveness of the action of the state, and we provide viable solutions for the victims themselves and have better deterrents for the recidivist criminals, and most importantly, the state's resources that can better be used. And we believe that at least on our side, we're the only one who look at the bigger picture by actually focusing on better alternative solutions for the problems of recidivist criminals and how the resources on state should not be used for fully compensating the victim, because the word fully here means that they have to pay everything that the victim go through. So first of all, what will the recidivist criminal look like at the end of this debate? On our side, we believe that they will be more responsible for their actions of what they have done to the victim, and they're more likely to change than the other side, since they have a burden to work and pay for the money. If not, they will face severe punishment. Well, on their side, we haven't seen them rebutted to us the point about how they will have on how the recidivist criminals, they will have a mindset is that, oh, I will not care since the state already take care of that for me. They haven't rebutted us on that point. And at the end of this debate, on their side, the recidivist criminals will only be even worse, since stated in the motion, the state do not provide them any punishment regardless, but they only focus on fully compensating to the victims themselves. So first of all, for third proposition, they says a lot of things about how the state have the responsibility to repair the criminal justice system and things like that. But our response here is that this motion is mainly about how they should fully compensate the victim. But if now they already fully compensate the victim, then they will have less resources to actually repair the criminal justice system if they already spend their resources to fully compensate the victims. And the question we really want to ask the proposition is that how will fully compensate those victims actually help the situation any better? Because firstly, on our side, okay, so moving on here to our extension, and we will explain further. So our extension here is that first of all, our first speaker, she mentioned very clearly the fact that the government might not have enough money to fully cover victims. Because the state, number one, they don't have the responsibility to fully compensate. I repeat, they don't have the responsibility to fully compensate. But that does not mean that they don't have anything to do with it. Like I said, they also need to help the people, and they also need to provide emotional support. But when they fully compensate, there's a lot of problems coming up. For example, fully compensating victims of recidivist criminals could impose a significant financial strain on the state's resources, and this money could otherwise be used for essential services like education, healthcare, or even repairing the criminal justice system, like you said before. So coming here is that the first proposition, they said to us that we should, their main case on first proposition is that we rejected, is that we should address the root issue. For example, make prison more beautiful and provide support for the criminals so that they will not commit crimes over and over again. we don't see how this is like related to the motion, because first things first, again, the motion is about how we should fully compensate the victims that the recidivist criminals harm those victims. So when like yes, even if we should address the root issue, we believe that when like you haven't mentioned to us how fully compensating those victims can actually help with all of the issues you just mentioned on how we should make prison more beautiful, etc. And like we believe that so coming to our second speaker, she says how this is an effective deterrent. She talked about bad mindset. She talked about resources should be directed towards effective rehabilitation programs to prevent recidivism rather than compensating victim after the fact. Like this like proactive approach addresses the root cause of the issue. And like we haven't heard any rebuttals coming from your side about this bad mindset coming from the recidivist criminals themselves. Now, second proposition, like the main case of second proposition surrounds the fact that if government wants to be trusted by people, then they need to fully compensate. This is totally false. First of all, they said to us that government wants the best for their citizen. This is true, but that does not mean that if their citizen wants something, they have to fully actually do that for their citizens. And you, and you also mentioned the fact that the government jobs is to protect their citizen from getting harmed by those recidivist criminal. We agree that it's their job to do so, but it's like, for example, let's take the mafia, for example. It's like a very dangerous criminals that FBI has been tracking down for centuries and centuries. And even if they did, they still lack the resources to actually track down those. So what like the state need is actually resources, but when they actually fully compensate those people, how will they get the resources to actually help those people from getting harmed? That's a very important question that proposition needs to think about. And you also said that justice system relies on trust, and like citizens won't trust state if they don't receive compensation. We have said again and again that even though like the state will not give them full compensation, again, they will still provide help. Like they will still provide a bit of extra fee for them to get by from their hospital fee, or a bit of like emotional support for them also. It does not mean, and it's also important to acknowledge the fact that their budget is also important too. The main clash that we have already talked about here is the effectiveness, right? We believe that effectiveness is really important when the state decided to implement a specific kind of rule. For example, in this case, is that they will fully compensate the victims. And the question is that how will fully compensate the victims actually help anything with changing the recidivist criminals? And also, like as the proposition said, they should focus on repairing the justice system when all like their resources goes into fully compensating those people so proud to oppose.